What happens when love becomes a prison? When adventure turns into a nightmare you can't escape from. August 12, 2021. Police body cameras capture a tearful 22-year-old woman apologizing for scratches on her fiancé's face outside a Utah grocery store. Officers separate them for one night, then let them continue their cross-country van trip together. 3 weeks later, she had vanished without a trace. Before we continue, write in the comments where you're watching from and which case types you'd like us to explore next. We read every comment and use your suggestions for future videos. Now, let's return to Gabby's journey. Gabby Petito was 22 years old, someone who found solace in yoga studios and coffee shops, planning adventures with meticulous detail. Behind her perfectly curated Instagram posts were photos that captured moments that mattered, quiet mornings in nature, conversations with strangers, the perfect shot that took 20 tries to get right. But there was something else about Gabby that those closest to her knew. She was a perfectionist who sometimes struggled with anxiety. Exactly 1 year before their final journey began, Gabby announced her engagement to Brian Laundrie on Instagram. The post showed two young people smiling, seemingly in love. They had met years earlier in their hometown of Blue Point, New York. To outsiders, they appeared to be the perfect couple, young, adventurous, ready to take on the world together. Brian was quiet where Gabby was outgoing, reserved where she was expressive, creating the kind of opposite personalities that can sometimes create a dangerous dynamic. By June 2021, Gabby and Brian had purchased what she called their garden on wheels, a white Ford Transit van. Gabby had spent months researching routes and campsites, dreaming of building a travel blog and sharing their journey with the world. The van represented freedom, independence, and a chance to see America's most beautiful landscapes. Her excitement was infectious among family members who remember how she couldn't stop talking about the trip. On July 2, 2021, they departed from New York with plans to travel through Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and other western states, visiting national parks and documenting everything for the van life dream that millions envied on social media. For the first few weeks, Gabby's Instagram posts showed stunning photographs from the great sand dunes in Colorado and Kansas prairies. Everything seemed perfect. But those who knew them both started noticing changes in Brian's body language in photos, and sometimes he wasn't in the pictures at all. You have to understand, when you're living in a confined space with another person for weeks, every small irritation becomes magnified and every disagreement feels enormous. This is where everything changed. August 12, 2021, when a witness called police after seeing what appeared to be a domestic dispute outside the Moonflower Community Cooperative in Moab, Utah. The witness described the pair as sort of squabbling over a phone and striking each other, kind of like two kids fighting. When Moab police arrived, they found Gabby in tears, clearly distressed. Body camera footage shows her explaining that she and Brian had been arguing while she appeared anxious, apologetic, taking blame for the situation. Her hands were shaking. The officers noticed scratches on Brian's face and arms. According to the police report, Gabby had slapped Brian after an argument, but both told the officer that neither wanted to press charges. They both insisted they loved each other. What's crucial to understand is what happened next. The officers separated the couple for the night with Brian staying in a hotel while Gabby remained with the van. They were advised to take time apart. Could this have been the moment that saved her life? We'll never know what might have happened if different decisions were made that night. Here's what makes this case so troubling. An independent review later found that the officers had misclassified the incident and their reports lacked crucial details. The investigation was clear that several unintentional mistakes were made during that encounter. The warning signs were there, but they weren't properly documented or addressed. Gabby's family would later say they wished she had just come home that day, but what happened next would leave investigators scrambling for answers. After the Moab incident, Gabby and Brian continued their journey through Arches National Park, then headed toward the Tetons in Wyoming. Gabby's social media posts became less frequent, but she still maintained contact with her family. On August 19, 2021, Gabby posted what would become her final Instagram photo, a picture of herself holding a carved pumpkin with the caption, "Happy Halloween." It seemed oddly out of season, almost melancholic. August 24, 2021, Gabby FaceTimed with her mother, Nicole Schmidt, appearing happy and excited about visiting Grand Teton National Park. They discussed Gabby's next destination, Yellowstone, and that was the last time Nicole would see her daughter alive. Between August 25 and 30, Nicole received several text messages from Gabby's phone, but something felt fundamentally wrong. The messages didn't sound like Gabby, with language that was different and more formal. One message read, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." The problem was that Gabby never called her grandfather, Stan, she always called him, Grandpa, and Nicole knew something was terribly wrong. September 1, Northport, Florida. Brian drives the white Ford Transit van into his parents' driveway, completely alone. He didn't contact Gabby's family, didn't report her missing, and didn't explain where she was. Instead, he hired a lawyer. Can you imagine being Gabby's parents in that moment? The young woman who had shared every detail of her adventure had simply disappeared. Gabby's disappearance was officially reported on September 11, 2021, when her mother, Nicole Schmidt, filed a missing persons report with the Northport police. By then, Gabby had been missing for nearly 2 weeks, but her family's desperate pleas would soon capture the attention of millions. Social media exploded with hashtag #FindGabbyPetito as her story touched something deep in the American consciousness. A young woman who had simply wanted to explore the country she loved, now vanished without a trace. The nation became invested in finding her, holding on to hope that she would be found safe. But what investigators discovered next would shatter that hope forever. On September 19, in Wyoming's Spread Creek area, 3 weeks after anyone last heard from Gabby, searchers made a discovery that would transform a missing person case into something far more sinister. They found her. But not the way anyone had hoped. The young woman who had dreamed of seeing America's natural wonders was gone. While the search for Gabby intensified, investigators had been building a case against Brian Laundrie. He was suspected of using a debit card and PIN for accounts that did not belong to him for charges of more than $1,000 sometime between August 30 and September 1. These weren't just random transactions, the timing was crucial as this was the period immediately after Gabby's last confirmed communication with her family. On September 22, 2021, the U.S. District Court of Wyoming issued a federal warrant for Brian's arrest, and he was indicted by a federal grand jury. But by then, Brian had disappeared after his parents told police they hadn't seen him since September 14, when he allegedly went hiking in the Carlton Reserve near their Florida home. Another search began, this time for the prime suspect in Gabby's death. On October 20, searchers found Brian Laundrie in the Carlton Reserve, but he would never face trial for what investigators believed he had done. A notebook found near his body contained what investigators called a confession, though the full contents were never released to the public. The case was closed without a trial, meaning there would be no courtroom justice for Gabby Petito. The Teton County Coroner's Office concluded that Gabby died of blunt force injuries, and ruled her death a homicide. Some questioned whether Brian was truly responsible or if someone else could have harmed Gabby, but the evidence says no. The timeline of events, the use of her debit cards, his behavior after returning to Florida, and his subsequent disappearance all point to one conclusion. Evidence strongly suggests Brian Laundrie was responsible for Gabby's death, though he was found deceased before the case could go to trial. In November 2022, a wrongful death claim brought by Petito's estate against Laundrie's estate resulted in an award of $3 million. But money could never restore what was lost as Gabby's story sparked national conversations about domestic violence, the dangers young women face while traveling, and the importance of recognizing warning signs in relationships. How many other Gabbys are out there right now, trapped in relationships that seem perfect from the outside but are destructive within? 3 years later, Gabby's case continues to influence how law enforcement handles domestic violence calls. The Gabby Petito Foundation works to support organizations that assist with locating missing persons and combating domestic violence, turning tragedy into a force for change. New training protocols for police officers now emphasize recognizing patterns of coercive control, partly inspired by the failures in Moab. In early 2025, Netflix released American Murder, Gabby Petito, featuring never-before-seen footage from the investigation and exclusive interviews with law enforcement officials. The documentary revealed that Brian's notebook confession contained disturbing details about his mindset in the final days, though the full contents remained sealed by court order. Just this year, the Petito family announced they're working with Congress on the Gabby Act, proposed federal legislation requiring mandatory domestic violence training for all park rangers and law enforcement in national parks. The bill has bipartisan support and could become law by 2026. But some wounds don't heal with legislation. That van, once a symbol of freedom, was eventually destroyed by Gabby's parents, not to erase her memory, but to stop it from becoming a monument to pain. But for the millions who followed Gabby's story, her impact on how we recognize and respond to domestic violence continues to save lives every day.
If you enjoy deep dives into true crime, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, friends!